Hey, welcome to Northern Echoes, The Journey. I have an incredible guest today. I'll get to him in a second, but just so you don't go anywhere, a multi-Juno award winner, so stay tuned. But since we are down in the Toronto Portlands, and we acknowledge we work, play, and share these lands covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas as the credit of the traditional territory of the Aysanabee, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. This land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and other First Nations people. We acknowledge that all their ancestors walked this land since time immemorial. We recognize that these lands are sacred and part of an agreement between Indigenous peoples and then extended to us, allied nations, to be peaceful and respectfully care for it. Northern Echoes, we pledge to live beyond the land acknowledgement and work towards a future where we listen, hold up, give space, and amplify the storytellers so that we all nations can succeed together on Turtle Island. So with that in mind, I'd like to welcome Juno Award winner Aysanabee. Welcome to Northern Echoes.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I'm so grateful that you're here. I first came to your music on your first album, Watin. And it hit me as somebody who has gone back and learned our real history. So I pledged to myself to kind of drill down a little bit into some indigenous cultures and particularly music, because music makes my world go round, it rocks my soul. I came upon your first album, and it just kind of it lived with me. And so it's Watin, and it was, why don't you give me a little background on how it was written, because it's a great story, and you're a great storyteller.
Yeah, thank you. That started out as just conversations with my grandfather. It wasn't going to be a record. It was just me interviewing him, essentially. Like, how it all started was, I moved to Toronto to pursue music, but then ended up working in journalism for a little bit. And I went up in March of 2020, and my aunt, who was kind of looking after him, decided he needed to move into long-term care. And so I had my own qualms about that, because long-term care facilities can be kind of pretty sterile environments, often underfunded and understaffed. And so I went up there to move him into this new place he was going to live. And I was just trying to make the room seem like his apartment.
Sure.
Comfort. Because it's just the way they have them set up is they're just curtains, and there's two people on the other side, and that's how you're expected to kind of live out the rest of your days. And I just tried to make it seem like his own space. And I spent a week up there, and then I came back. I'd come back to work, and then on the plane is when the pandemic was declared in Canada. I was on my way back. I got home, and I was working in news, so I was doing COVID updates every day, and then I started doing a lot of stories on long-term care facilities. Sure. And when outbreaks would happen there, the place I had just moved my grandfather into. So that's what started these conversations, where I was just at first calling him to
see if he's okay,
and get his mind off of me, being familiar voice, just feeling, how's your day, how is the place, anything I could do. And eventually we just ran out of small talk, and so it went. So then we started talking about real stuff. I started asking about all the things he remembered about growing up in Sandy Lake First Nation, because, he told me all these stories about, him going out and living on the trap line with his brothers and his dad, and them like trapping, and stories about like his grandmother, like my great grandmother, getting wood and like trying to bring the wood across on the canoe, and the canoe flipping, and her trying to save all the wood, but they're just like, get back to the shore. Just funny stories. But then it eventually led to him telling me about his experience in residential school, being taken when he was 8. And like I had known he'd gone to residential school. We never talked about it before.
Yeah, it's a thing this country just never talked about, really.
Exactly.
Right?
And so he'd only ever talked about it like, with my grandmother, who also went to residential school, and, to the TRC when they were going around interviewing people.
So did he testify that Truth and Reconciliation?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so he didn't really talk about it too much, and didn't talk about it with any of the family. And so I just, we talked about it, and there was a lot of things I didn't know. I didn't know he met my grandmother in residential school. I didn't know they fell in love. I didn't know, they didn't go back to their communities. They after, once they were able to leave, they went and started a new life together. And there was all this stuff I didn't know. And so this is all just coming out like, calling him, setting up a mic, and essentially interviewing him like an hour before work every day. And
so it's an oral history of your families.
Yeah. And, like I think like the pandemic prompted it, like his kind of, like some of the stories about him being back home in Sandy Lake, like that. There was details that I remembered that he didn't remember, and that's what kind of like prompted me to be like, do you mind if I record these stories? Because like some of his memories were starting to fade, right?
And this is a great time to get this.
So I spend a year interviewing my grandfather, and we talk about like everything, and and then flash forward, a year goes by, and it's the holidays. I'm not able to go home to visit him, so I'm just like kind of listening to these recordings in my apartment in Toronto, and there's just certain parts of the stories that just move me, and then I ended up just writing a song, and then I think like, oh, this is how I'll capture a bit of his story. It's just like make an album, because I was making music, but it's interesting because like at the top of 2020 I was playing, and we played, and I was like, oh, maybe this will be a good music year. And then the whole world shut down, and I was like, okay. And I'd come to a point in my life where I was like, okay, well, I'll just make music as a hobby, because it's like something I just really enjoy doing.
It's your passion.
And so, I thought like, this is a perfect project. This is something I want to do. This is something that's really important to me. And I just started working on this album, and I thought it would be like, 4 years until it was done. Like I thought, like, because I was gonna like, I was working in news, and like, I mean, like working in news is like kind of draining, because it's like just a lot of heavy stories all the time.
Yeah.
So like when you get off a shift, you kind of just want to like unplug.
Yeah.
So I thought, when I'm not too tired from news, I'll slowly start putting together this record on my grandfather. But then,
slowly. Didn't turn out to be slowly.
It didn't turn out to be slow, because I was scrolling.
It was a waterfall.
Yeah. Well, what happened was I was scrolling, and it said apply to play the International Indigenous Music Summit. So I sent in like a performance video, and then the women who founded that, like Amanda Rayom and Shoshana Kish, had seen the video.
A couple other Indigenous artists that everybody should know about.
Yeah. Digging Roots and Amanda Rayom, incredible artists and incredible people. They saw the video, and they're just like, they got a hold of me, and they're just like, who are you? And how come we've never heard of you before? And like, what are you up to? And so like I knew who they were.
For sure.
And so I was like, yeah, I've been playing around the city for a little while, but I guess I'm just working on this project. Like it's probably, and I told them about the project I was working on with my grandfather, and these recordings and the story, and so they call me back not very long after, and they're just like, hey, you know what? We decided we got this crazy idea. We want to start a brand new record label, and we want you to be the first signee to it. And then all that, that was 2021. So it's like, I guess
it was only 4 years ago.
I know, it's just kind of wild just to think about. So 4 years ago,
to me, it's like a watershed moment for you. Like this,
well,
there's a lot of serendipity there.
Truly, it was like, I remember being like, yeah, totally involved and invested, and I was just like, this sounds incredible. So like, eventually, like that, I think is what kind of lit the fire to me. When I'm working by myself, for myself, like I can really take my time, but like as soon as other people involved, I'm like, oh, I better get this done. So like
there's a gatekeeper.
It's me, it's myself. Yeah. So yeah, like as soon as there's like I signed with them, and I just started working. I was working during the day as a journalist, and then in the night I was like listening to these recordings and making little notes and kind of just putting together. I would just listen to the recordings until something really kind of hit me or moved me or like shook my world, and then would write and see what happened. 'Cause it's like a very call and response album. And yeah, so
yeah, it's just to listen to that album is, your songwriting is, I think it's a gift. I really, your songwriting is so spectacular. 2024 Songwriter of the Year. That is such a momentous award. I know artists that have set that as a goal who've written phenomenal songs and just didn't break that threshold, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think your songwriting has resonated with a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. Your voice is, smooth like butter. Your musicianship and your producing is, to me, these are all kind of gifts that culminated. I have a 18-year-old son.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to frame this up in a little quick. And he's, in that adolescence period between like 15 and 18, it's a little bit of a trying period because they don't know what they want to do. There's a lot of pressure on them. There's a lot of stress on them. So they're always trying to figure out who they are and where they're going. And now they've got different emotions along the way that they've got to put into the mix as well, because they're really starting to learn about emotions, love. Not everything's pink and blue anymore. So he struggles, and he still does at this time, in what he wants to do. And I tell him, your gift will find you. So when I say that you have the gifts, these gifts, I just found you, right? They culminated in the right moment, right? You have the skill, you have the talent. The storytelling is outstanding. Like I said, that first album is you did, for your ancestors and for your grandfather and his ancestors and his grandparents and his parents. You told a story that is normally passed down through generations of ancestry. Storytelling. So like celebrate the gift, man, is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Yeah, it was pretty incredible journey. And I didn't actually produce that record. I remember I thought I was going to, actually, because I remember when I was like at home working on the demos and like using my DAW and everything, and I think Shoshona and Amanda had reached out while I was working on it, and they're like, so like which producer did you have in mind to work on the record? And I was like, oh, I'm not going to be doing this in my bedroom. I was like, all right. So I started like looking around, and
so you got to pick your own producer for the first one too.
Yeah. So like I was looking around, and I came across Hill Kirkudis, who I was just going through some of like her discography, and sonically it just sounded like a lot of stuff I was looking for. Had I dug deeper into her discography, I would have saw that she was also produced Amanda's and Shoshona's record. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at the time. So like when I brought it, I was like, yeah, I would like to work with Hill. They're like, well, we could probably contact her for sure. Like, and I was like, all right. And so I remember my first meeting with Hill, and I was like, running up the Don Valley, I decided I'd get into jogging because you're only allowed to leave the house if you exercised. Right. And so I was jogging, and I posted a video of myself, and Hill saw Hill saw the video on the Instagram. She started following me or whatever, and she responded with like a fire emoji. And I remember like just stopping at that. I got a notification like that. I was like, oh. So like I stopped by the river, the Don Valley River, and which just I remember being like, this is our first interaction. Like, how do I respond? How do I be cool? And like was just trying to like think of like a cool response, and I don't know. I guess I'm not very cool, so it's just like I just like 20 minutes went by, and I was like, you know what, Hill, I've been sitting here for 20 minutes trying to think of something cool to say. I got nothing. I just really love your work and would like to work with you, and the rest is history.
That's the coolest response you could probably come up with.
Yeah, so we ended up working together, and we're still really good friends. I think when you work on a full record with somebody, there's so much that goes into that. There's so much like trust, and there's so much care and good communication. So it's like
it's good share. It's share too.
Yeah,
right? Like it's back and forth.
Exactly.
Right? And you have to open yourself up for that cumulative collaboration.
Yeah.
Right. That brings your songs and your storytells to a different level that maybe you might not have seen.
Well, it was wild, and like that I think that had set the whole foundation to where I'm at now. Like that, and it was like I don't think it hit me till later on that like more people would start hearing this record, and I think that's what kind of
when did that actually hit you?
I think as like we're releasing songs and we're starting to do press, and I'm starting to talk to like all these different outlets, and then I'm starting to realize like
I got something here.
More people than my friends are going to be hearing this record, like more people, more than the 20 people I would bother to come to my shows.
There's a lot of people in
Thunder
Bay that went to your shows too as well. Yeah. So.
And so it was like I thought, okay, maybe it's not gonna, more people are gonna, and then that started getting my mind kind of worried about the record, because like I was worried. I think my biggest worry with the record was that like residential school survivors would listen to the record and maybe it would re-traumatize them.
Yeah, and that's a valid concern.
And so that started going through my mind, and we put the record out, and then months later, like I had this Facebook message, and because I had have an artist page, and I'll go on there once in a while to update stuff, and like there was a message in there, and it was this woman, and it was just like she said like, I had my granddaughter help me set this up so I can like speak to you, and I just wanted to say that I heard the record, or I heard a song, and then I listened to the record, and it's like, I think she said it was like something along those, like it's such an important or beautiful thing that our stories are finally being told by our people in our words. So like, thank you so much for doing that, and like keep up the good work. And like, so suddenly like that fear I had, kind of the weight of that left a little bit, just because I was worried that people like her would be re-traumatized, but instead she was happy that
she might have exhaled a little bit to a certain degree. There's a lot of pent up emotion for survivors and for the families of the ones that didn't make it home from Indian residential schools. And to hear the story starting to become mainstream now, and through poetry, songwriting, and there might have been some healing from that was garnered. That is part of this whole process, right? So
I think that was the craziest thing to come from the record for sure. As my grandfather had told me that he was like, he'd come to a place in his life where he's able to like move on, and in some cases forgive, and like he was able to do that before he passed away. And so like for a lot of survivors, like they'll never.
It's tough. It's a tough thing to get over. I have some friends that are survivors, and they've their testimonies with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and it's ebbs and flows for them, right? You know what I mean? There's a fire of resilience, and then there are low periods as well, right? So, but for the stories to be retold is the most important thing for a survivor, I believe. Can't speak on their behalf, but that's important. So, like, that first album is just boom. Man, it was a gift to you as You know what I mean? It's for me, just as
Yeah.
an observer, it was like, wow, what a gift that is. Your voice. So we go into the EP.
Yeah.
And then after that, after the Junos, it was the Junos
Yeah.
first, and then the EP, and then all
yeah,
of a sudden you get
it
thrust into
it was Juno's and then
national spotlight.
Yeah. That was yeah, it was like a bit to get used to, but I think like just because of my own experiences and how like I like approach projects, or how I kind of buried myself in work a bit too. So it's like I was like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this.
Always do that.
So-
Everybody does.
So I have like a really bad problem with doing that. Like I
Just one more edit. One more.
well, it's like I went on like a 4-day vacation at some point, and like I was on this beach, and like it was like the beautiful sand, warm, beautiful, crystal clear water, and like this beautiful sunset. And I'm just sitting there wondering what's going on in my email, and one of my like I couldn't turn it off that whole trip. It's like, so I'm trying to get better at that, but I think that's what kind of helped me kind of get through the last few years, is just that kind of work ethic and that kind of working towards something. But I am trying to like remove the tunnel vision a little bit, so I can kind of also be present and enjoy what's happening.
Absolutely.
So,
Right? You've got to accept those gifts and enjoy those gifts
Yeah.
that come along the way for you to go, this is like a great journey, right? And thankful for this journey, man. I'm going to do all the things that you do for your craft,
yeah.
and then enjoy the journey, the community, the journey, and everything that goes along with it. So the Junos came first before the EP, or the EP?
Well,
Close together, right?
Well, the Junos came after the EP. Like I was nominated for the first record, but that first record came out like I think in November, and the Junos were like
March.
yeah, November or January, or no, December, January, February, March, like 4 months later. So I think I was still pretty relatively like not known by much of the music industry, not known in like far and wide. So like, yeah, I think the nomination was in the contemporary indigenous category.
Yep.
And, yeah, I didn't win, but like it definitely created this spotlight, and like people are like, oh, like who was, cause I got to perform too. So
Yeah.
I think I remember just like, I was like
Was that with Digging Roots, that one?
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
both nominated.
Yeah.
But when I performed with Northern Cree.
Oh, that.
Yeah,
And that's on that particular performance. You put the
my grandfather was in there.
yes, and the if you're a residential school survivor,
please
contact the hotline. That was an incredible performance. It really was.
I have, that's still such a moment for me, and a moment for a lot of different people too, to kind of, I don't know, like I still, that's still like one of the greatest moments I think I get to kind of just telling the story, who we told the story with, and like how it was received. It was just,
Well, and you had all the cultural elements in there, jingle dress dancers.
yeah,
It was like, wow, you didn't miss anything. Your outfit,
yeah.
which was acknowledged. And do you want to go back and give us a little 411 on the outfit?
Yeah. So that the jacket itself was made by Call and Response, but it was like designed by Travis Schilling, who's like this artist, this indigenous artist, but like his father also went to residential school, and his father was an artist, and how Travis became an artist. So his father became an artist because he'd be at school and he'd grab like the little bits of like coal and stuff from the fire, like the burnt logs or whatever, and use that to like draw under the bunk beds. And he would like draw, he started by drawing like sandwiches and like food that they didn't get. And so that's how he started drawing, right? And eventually he kept carried on with it. And then his son got into it, and his son makes really beautiful art. And so we reached out and asked him if he would help design a jacket for for the show, and we told him what the show was and the stories, and so he designed this jacket that had all these feathers, which represented, like, you know, every different residential school and all the numbers of the missing kids from every school. So that's what every feathering kind of had a number on it, and that's what those numbers stood for.
Yeah, it's so there's almost like a ceremonial kind of piece, and that's important in the storytelling of that Juno performance. Like if people may have seen it, if they've listened to this podcast right now and they're watching the podcast, go back and watch it again.
Yeah,
please just go back and watch that again. It's just really, really powerful piece. So then became the EP.
Yeah, so like
we just kept on rolling.
Well, the EP, I remember being so nervous about putting that EP out because, like, you know, I write. Like, I write based on my lived experience, right? Like, and so at that point, like, I had been just touring pretty hard and nonstop for like, you know, a year and a half, and it was just like, my life essentially was just like flying, being in green rooms, being on a train, being on the bus, being in the van.
Tour life.
It's
not all glamorous if you're thinking.
Yeah, it's really
fun.
It's really cool that you get to
draining.
see so many places, but like it's not as wild as like it's portrayed. Like, especially when you're like emerging and you're like, you know, not in the fanciest of.
Well, you don't get the A green room.
Yeah,
right?
so it's like, but yeah, like I think in my personal life, you know, I was with this person and I'm no longer with them, but just because like they knew me before all this happened, and so there was that life, and then suddenly where I'm just gone all the time.
Yeah.
And that's like, you know, tough for anyone.
Every breakup's a tough one, man.
Yeah. And so that happened, and I was writing all these songs, and I remember being like so nervous to put that out because, you know,
it's not just your story now.
Well, yeah. But to follow up the transition of like being this record that suddenly became almost like a national talking point and different, you know, or became part of a larger conversation, I should say. And it was like really pretty heavy in context to suddenly, here's my breakup album. Like I was like a bit self-conscious about that, but it brought me back to being like, I was at this music conference. Where was it? It might have been Mundial Montreal, and I think it was definitely like an indigenous panel where there was like indigenous artists from different parts of the world, and it brought me back to this Sami artist, and she was like, they're like, oh, can you tell me like what makes your music indigenous? And yeah, she had this really beautiful, eloquent way of saying that I'll probably butcher it, and I'm just gonna give like a condensed version, but she's just talking about like, yeah, you know, like, and she's like, I think that gets kind of all mixed up. She's like, yeah, there's some songs I do in language, there's some songs I do that get attention because they're quite heavy songs. But she's like, you know, I think it would be, she's like, I think my dream one day is just to put out an album about love and not have to like just, you know,
take a stance
and talk about trauma or something, you know, and so I remembered that when I was like had all these songs, so it's like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And
storyteller is a storyteller,
yeah,
right? It always comes down to that, and lived experiences are typically what storytellers tell.
And you know, that's such a universal feeling too. I think a lot of people were able to kind of relate, you know, so I think, yeah, we put the album out or the EP out, and that's what, you know, that's what led to the two Junos after. And I remember because I was not expecting those. Like I was like maybe I might get like the indigenous one, because I was nominated for the contemporary indigenous artist again. And actually, I wasn't sure if I had won that one or not at first, because Alyssa P won it, but Alyssa P and Aysanabee, and You know, I think the host kind of struggling to say either of the names. Like the way they said Aysanabee did sound like Aysanabee. So like I think like we both looked at each other and we're like,
Are you?
and then like Aysanabee like got up and I was like, I didn't think it was very confusing, but yeah, her record was really beautiful.
There's so much great Indigenous talent out there.
Yeah.
There really is.
Yeah, and Aysanabee is such an amazing person. Because I first met Aysanabee like I think like 3 years ago, back when I was just starting out. Like Aysanabee invited me to be on like the Grand Solstice, which is like the broadcast show they do for Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yeah.
And like I was like, no one really knew me, but she had heard of me and invited me over to like be a part of the broadcast that she was running. And yeah, just a lovely human, and that her whole family. Yeah.
And we're approaching the summer solstice now. Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
We are in Indigenous History Month, and we're coming up to Indigenous Peoples Day, and your album release.
Yeah, my album comes out the day before, and so yeah, you know, I'm traveling all day that day, so
You're out in BC that day, I think.
Yeah, Chelenko Forks. We're gonna be kind of playing up. We're gonna be playing up for Community, which is gonna be nice. Like which will be pretty nice actually, because I think the last couple of years I've kind of done different like Indig Day shows in different places, like
The more national kind of things, like
yeah, like I think one of the last ones I did was actually in Montreal at like Cabot Square, which that one was actually nice too, because you know it was in Cabot Square, which like you know it can, that area is just a whole lot of people who could really use music. You know, a whole lot of people who could really.
Yeah, well, this is going back to the community, and
yeah.
You know what I mean, that music heals.
Yeah.
For me, music's been my whole life, and I'm in my 6th generation. Has always been a very good friend.
Yeah. Well, it'll be different this year because I'm going to play it like at the First Nation, and it's kind of like it'll be interesting because like at the other events I do feel like I'm telling the story and I'm explaining and but it'll be interesting being in a setting where you know,
you're with family and community.
Yeah, they just kind of get it, you know, and there's no explaining needed.
Yeah.
And the album will
There's
come
no
out.
teaching.
Yeah.
You may become the taught.
No, exactly.
With conversations in that surrounding.
Definitely. I always love going out to the West. And I love spending time with the First Nations out West too, just because they're so connected to the culture out there, and the culture is so rich, and so much of the memory is still there, and so much of like,
but particularly the BC ones. And
yeah,
I think BC has done became aware of these cultures in a provincial sense quicker than the rest of the nation did, because they celebrated those Salish cultures along the way.
Yeah.
Right? So they're in tune. They're well into their journey of who they are, right, and their reclamation process.
Yeah.
Where I maybe out here in Ontario and Saskatchewan and Manitoba, where Saskatchewan's pretty good too. You're playing Saskatchewan in November.
Exactly.
This year.
Well, I know there's like the whole conversation of like where the colonies started forming first, and like where, you know, so there's like a lot of that history on like where the impacts were felt first, like as far as colonization and all that sort of thing. But that's a whole other.
Yeah, we don't want to get the listeners all wrong too. Like it's just good damn music.
Yeah,
man. Like when you really come down to it, you're going to dance to it. You're going to slow dance to it. You're going to jump.
Well, the new album is definitely
got a fire.
Yeah, it is like a collection of songs that just kind of tell like my story over the past 3 years. You know, I told my grandfather's story. I put out the breakup record, and so this is like the first album that.
Where do we go? Where are we going? Like, you know what I mean? That's like the journey.
Yeah, it offers people like a different, like a look at me and how my experience has been in the last 3 years, and it's just kind of an open and honest kind of reflection on certain transitional moments in my life in the past 3 years during this kind of rise to
Wherever you're going.
yeah,
Wherever it ends up being.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's called Edge of the Earth, and it's interesting because it's like it's going to be new to everybody, but for the artists, it
was ready in March, wasn't it?
Oh, it was ready back in November.
Wow.
But we were so, we decided to delay it for a number of reasons. I think one of the best reasons was I was just tired.
Yep.
I'd been on the road for it was 3 years nonstop, and there was a few shows I'd played before I was like, I'm taking this chunk of time and I'm just gonna go on vacation, where I was just getting burnt out, and I was just I was out, I wasn't taking care of myself, and I was just the last couple shows I was like, I don't feel like my heart's into this performance right now, and it's not
time to take a break.
That's not only
you need to regenerate yourself too as well.
Exactly,
right?
You gotta fill the cup and gotta rest and gotta
replenish the soul.
Yeah,
because you give the soul in your performances, in your songwriting. First of all, I talked to Steve Page, another songwriter, a couple weeks ago, and he's like, my whole soul goes into a song when I'm writing a song. And it's like I used to be very protective of that song, right, and how it went out, but now I'm not so protective, and how it touches people is a gift to him, right? So as a songwriter, I'm pretty assuming that you need to replenish your soul.
Yeah.
You're giving your soul, dude. Let's not
or just take the time and reflect and grow, and I'm smiling because I'm trying to do the work, I'm trying to rest, and there's this funny moment where I was just I started doing therapy, I was starting to get cluttered mind, starting to get frustrated at this and that, and I was like, I don't want to be like that, and so I started to do the work. And I have this great therapist who teaches Western therapy, but also she's indigenous, and so she puts the medicine wheel teachings into it as well, right? So she'll give me both versions. She'll be like, so this is what I'd tell you if I was just doing Western, and she'll go through all of it, and she's like, well, and this is how we look at it. And so it's been a very beautiful experience. But I only laugh because at one point I was just before I was starting it, I was like, will I turn this into an album? And I was just like, that is disturbing. I got to decolonize my mind here and just do the healing and not think about how to make art out of it.
Right. And so music is therapy for a lot of people. So giving again that soul, and you know what I mean, and having to replenish it, it's just a reality, man. You have to, I know music. I've done a couple. I do what's called the AMP, the Awesome Music Project sessions. It's the AMP sessions, and it deals with mind health or mental health, and music as a therapy for this. And they actually delve and do work with youth, in troubled youth, and less fortunate areas, programs to support their music through teaching, right? And they also do it in long-term care facilities for aging population, so that their mind stays active. So in order for your mind to stay active, you need that kind of therapy to do so, right? I myself, you know what I mean, I went through a burnout period in my career, and I had a therapist, and you know what she said? She said, find your spirit she wrote me an actual prescription, dude. It said, find your spirit being, go see a concert, get in touch with all the things you want to do again. So, and that, again, with that whole of music as a piece of therapy, brought me out of that period in my life. Right? So replenish, take the time you need, man, dude, and just do the things you want to do.
Totally.
Sometimes.
I wonder if that's what happened to Jagmeet. And then he went to the Kendrick concert and got called out. Have you seen that?
No, I didn't see that.
It's Jagmeet went out to the Kendrick Lamar concert, and then I guess Drake saw it and was screen capped a conversation that called him a goof, and I was like, damn, that must be rough just to go out to a concert and then suddenly get put on fire.
And you know what? And politics is a whole different, you know what I mean? A whole different soul suck. You know what I mean? I believe they all get into it for the right reasons.
No, totally.
But it's totally, you know what I mean? I think it's pretty intense as a musician. As a politician, it's really, really intense as well.
No, I mean, he's stepping down. So, I mean,
Well, he has to spend time with his family. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? There's,
Totally.
you know, so it's everybody in the world needs time with the community, their family, their traditions, and to find out who they are and get in touch with the soul, roll around in the dirt a little bit.
yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. So,
So the new album's out. We're coming up onto
Yeah.
it this week, and thank you for coming here and speaking to us about it. The track listing, if you give me a second here, give me, where was it recorded?
so there's a number of different producers on there, right? People I've worked
Let's
with
give them some love.
over the years. Yeah, like there's Derek Hoffman, who I've worked with on the last record. We put a few songs on there. Hill Kirkudis, who I worked my whole Watin album.
On the first album. Yeah.
She's got 2 songs on there. Scott and Kyla, like they produced "Letting Go" off the last record too, and they're good pals. And Charlie McLean, who produced "Alone" off the last record. Yeah, she has 2 songs on there. And Mark Kosher, who I've met just through, you know, being in music and
The community.
yeah, incredible producer. I'm excited to go and work with him more too. Like he's just got such a genius mind when it comes to textures and sounds, and I don't know. I just love how he makes like a slow song sound so like massive and
Vibrant.
anthemic, and yeah. So yeah, all of them, I consider them pretty close friends, and I think that kind of shows in the music too. It's like easy to make good music when you're in a room with people you trust and people you love, and they get you, and you challenge each other in ways that make sense.
Yeah, and it's an important part of the process, right? Because you're creating art together, right? And as a songwriter, so you're the initial creator, but there are little nuances that, wow, man, that sounds good.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And like, so that's an important part of the process. Right? I listened to the album on the way in today, and I listened to a couple cuts on the weekend, and you've been releasing cuts.
Yeah.
Teasing us a little bit along the way.
Well, the singles to try and drum up the excitement.
Yeah, no, but it's any day where we get good new music from you, and I'm going to go through the track listing on here because Embers is, what a great, like all of the titles are awesome. So there's Embers, The Way We're Born, rectifying with who we are the way we come into this world, taking it for a surf ride along the way. I love that name, right? Home. You spoke of home earlier, right? And that comfort. It's a comfort food. Baby, Gone, Baby, Gone. The love song type of vibe to it. Without You, we get into more of a...
Yeah, that one's
that's for your grandfather.
Yeah, that one's a pretty heavy one for sure. We did a music video too up on Whitefish Lake when I was up, but to start the northern leg of the tour. I went up there with my buddy Chad, and we put together that music video. And it's like there's a little bit of kind of Easter eggs in there. I don't think anyone would understand because I haven't really told the story, which was like, it was. Being on the ice and being in that's part of that's what prompted me to come to Toronto. Is I'd fallen through the ice and had a near-death experience, so I moved to Toronto to pursue music. But yeah, my uncle, because my uncle also fell through the ice, but he didn't make it. Right?
Wow, that's
these are 2 different
traumatic.
times, but like we weren't together.
Uncle first, or
Uncle first.
So that was in there already in your mind when you went through the ice.
Yeah, exactly. Because like we always kind of get together and have dinner and go to the theater and watch a movie together. Right? And he didn't make it, and so for the longest time, like a bunch of the family thought like maybe he's still out there, like he's an outdoors guy, maybe he's just lost out there, right? So like they found the hole, but then he probably got out. Like maybe he's looking for. So it was wasn't until the spring, right, when we could find him, and so I just thought of that for my family. With me, I was like, that would be an awful thing to put the family through, and so my grandfather, he never snowmobiled again after that, after his son died, and so the whole video's me on a snowmobile on the lake, kind of showing a breaking of cycles and a moving forward,
Love it.
So
Yeah.
Without You is his morning song. Yeah.
Good love. We can always use good love.
Yeah.
Just give me good love, right? Don't give me bad love. That's the base point. Walking to the edge of the earth.
Yep.
And everything that's in front of you.
Yeah.
Dreamcatcher.
Dreamcatcher is probably the oldest written song on there. That was written back in 2022. When my whole career was starting, and I think I threw the whole concept of that song into the press release, which is how much do I value art and how much would I be willing to sacrifice for it? And I think each of the songs kind of answer that question in a different way. And
Awesome.
maybe I didn't, maybe my actions weren't the best in some circumstances and they're good in others, but they all kind of speak to that overarching question.
Live a good life.
Yep.
We're here for the right reasons.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. We really are. The tour, you're going on a major tour in the fall.
Yeah.
Western Canada. So, but you're going out for Canada Day in Calgary. Friends in Calgary, please go fulfill a better musical world. Where you're doing Canada Day festivities? Where?
In Calgary. I couldn't tell
I
you.
guess it's the big one in Calgary.
Yeah. I couldn't say.
You've done
precisely
Canada
where.
Day in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And you're you're there for all the right reasons on these national broadcasts, right? Because you have the art, and you have the talent, and you have, what I mean, that soul it takes to get music.
Yeah.
And our country is in a better place than it was 20 years ago.
No,
15
exactly.
years.
I know there's several artists who will boycott it, Indigenous artists. And I totally understand that.
For sure.
Totally respect that.
I wouldn't trust me either.
But I think it's still important. It's still important to have every voice in those places and every perspective in those places. And it's time to celebrate wins, but it's also time to acknowledge history. It's a time to acknowledge things because that's how you move forward, right?
Well, it's the first you have to learn, I guess, as a settler, you have to learn the truth. Right? Relearn our truth, relearn our history, understand the healing that's required.
Yeah.
To get us through this point, and for some it'll take longer than others, and we need to understand that, and there's a hope for future generations.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that you're part of that hope for the future generations because you've come from humble beginnings, but they're rooted in the community and those teachings of the Indigenous world, which are philosophy that is if my ancestors would have learned, I've said this 100 times, my ancestors would have learned that, I don't think we would have, and accepted those teachings from the Indigenous original land keepers. We'd be in a different spot than we are today.
Yeah.
Right. But we have to understand that and then walk forward together this time. And so my, non-Indigenous friends, I'll get off my soapbox on that and let you know that. Yeah. Also coming up is the Edmonton Folk Festival in August. I've already got my tickets for Budweiser Stage here in Toronto with Blue Rodeo and Miss Russell.
Yeah. They're
And
both
you've had a
incredible.
collaboration with Allison before.
We went on tour together. I was opening for her. Yeah.
Then you're off to Germany.
Yep.
Back in November. November you hit it hard, man. Red Deer, Lake Country, BC, Victoria, BC, Campbell River, BC, Vernon, BC, Banff, Alberta, Saskatoon, Regina, and Winnipeg.
Oh yeah, we got a whole. I think we have maybe about 20 dates, so there's still a bunch that aren't even announced yet.
Right.
So yeah, we'll have a bunch of shows we're announcing this week, this Friday. we have a bunch of shows that we'll be announcing. But one thing too is, we're kind of doing the same thing we did at my first headline tour this past spring, where we're asking like local indigenous artists to
Openers.
come and share the stage. So I put the call out. Gonna start going through applications this Friday, but still open. So still send them in if you see a city. Just looking for local indigenous artists to share the stage, and just so I can like meet everybody and help push some of their music.
Yeah, well, and it's just an exposure for them as well, and as well, it's their stories, right?
Yeah.
Storytelling is only as good as everybody that's telling it. We all, as community, should share those together.
Yeah. And like that was a really special part about the last tour, was just getting to meet so many incredible. There's a few that I already knew, but there's definitely artists that I had heard of, or I discovered them when they sent in the application, because I personally go through all the applications and like listen to the music, and then we'll like do a deep dive and see what they're all about, and
that's soulful discovery as
well.
No, it's
totally
a little journey, right?
Yeah.
Enough about what I'm doing. Let's I need a break from me.
Yeah, no, exactly, and it's really sweet, and it's like, because I remember like when I was trying to start in music, like I didn't know how a music career works. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know where to end up. I didn't know anything. I just wrote songs and would play dive bars and hope something happened. So it's like, with all these artists, just going through what they're up to and see what they're trying to do, and just share insights.
Open the world for them, right? Why not?
Yeah,
You know what I mean,
it's been quite nice. Yeah, like I saw Sarah Kay, who opened up for me on all the northern dates up in the north, and I saw her at the Indigenous Music Summit, and she said like since that she's been getting real busy, getting a lot of bookings, getting a lot of different projects, like, so that's really awesome.
I can't say enough for anybody that's listening or watching. Do a deep dive on the Indigenous artists, because there are some phenomenal ones.
Yeah, incredible.
There really are.
Yeah.
I know in Toronto, this coming on National Indigenous Peoples Day, the 20th and 21st, there's Snotty Nose Reds kids are playing. Somebody you've worked before, Dan, DJ Shub.
Yeah.
Who did a remix of one of your songs. Twin Flames is playing. Those are some of my friends of mine. And it's so, like, take these opportunities to just open your mind and get touched.
No, there's so much talent out there, yeah.
So I hate to close this off, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank you for sharing your soul, because it does touch people out there, right? Your storytelling, and don't stop. They are northern echoes. It is a journey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And thanks for being with us. I've been looking forward to seeing you every time you come to town. And then maybe have you back to the show if you don't have it. And,
sounds great.
Want to thank our friends here at the Toronto Podcast Studio down in the Portlands and on Cherry Beach. And it's just a great podcast studio to shoot from. See you next time on Northern Echoes, The Journey. Thanks for tuning in.